Okay, it's great to be back here with Libertarian Conventioneers once again. I've been paying attention to Libertarians for quite a while, as you might be able to tell from the shirt here that I've got. For those who haven't heard me last year or learned about LEA, Legislative Evaluation Assembly, through our website or radio interviews, I will let you know more about our organization and the issues we are seeing impacting state government. I also want to cover something else based on what I've been observing recently. It's kind of hard to do in a few words without being misunderstood, but I'm going to try. I'm one of many that's hungry for alternatives to the established parties and power brokers, not very eager at all to vote for the front-running candidates in the major parties as we see right now. And I listened to the interview that Governor Johnson did on the radio here last week, and I watched the Stossel moderated LP presidential debate, and I found I most preferred the moderator of the people that were on the stage, which I don't see when I see debates moderated by Megyn Kelly or Anderson Cooper. But anyway, my understanding of libertarianism is that it opposes fraud in all its forms, and opposes force except for personal self-defense, and opposes force by government except for constitutional purposes. So, but it's easy to read polls, follow trends, and reduce the definition of libertarian, which I've heard quite a bit lately, to being fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And I'm here to tell you that I think that is unnecessarily limiting. Many social conservatives can find common interests with libertarians and vice versa. Most oppose government as a primary top-down source of enculturation and education. They affirm innocent human life. They fear intrusion into their families, their beliefs, and their property, and their rights to bear arms by governmental, educational, and medical institutions. And it's just things such as the surveys that you heard from the Osseo school board member, the intrusive surveys trying to pry into the private lives of their families. They don't want to create penalties for crimes based on the status of the victim, but on the crime itself. Impose enlisting government to provide preferential treatment to groups deemed to be disadvantaged. Not think religious liberty is just for credentialed ministers or confined to houses of worship. They do not want to have to provide services they believe to be morally objectionable. And if libertarianism is about first principles, if it's about embracing economic freedom and about embracing social freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of contract, then people who share these beliefs should be able to find a home with the libertarians. So when I hear that I hear that religious discrimination is a black hole when it comes to not allowing people to deny services based on their religious convictions, or that we have to oppose bigotry in all its forms. Well, if you listen to that presidential debate, they brought up the example of whether or not a Jewish baker should be able to deny services to someone who wants a Nazi cake. And so in that case, we say, well, that's really wrong. But in terms of relying on the group's opinion of what is really right or really wrong, let's respect individual belief, individual freedom of conscience, and individual freedom of contract. But now, to go on to what LEA is, we've been around since 1972. We're a grassroots-driven organization, all volunteer organization. We have people involved there from different parties, from all walks of life. People with scientific backgrounds, people with business backgrounds, people with academic backgrounds, people who have served inside the legislature or on staffs that have seen the problems from the inside. And what we're primarily known for is our annual report on the Minnesota legislature. And we print these, and they're also available archived on our website, which is lea-mn.org. Okay, and I have copies of it back. We have a vendor table back here, and I can take time to talk to you here through early this evening. Anybody who wants to know more specifically about what we do. We evaluate based on the criteria that are listed right on the top of our report and on our website. We embrace constitutionalism, limited government, free enterprise, individual liberty and dignity, legal and moral order, justice, And we have a scorecard in our reports, but beyond having a scorecard, we take a bill or an amendment that we score, and we'll go into a detailed analysis. We'll talk about, first of all, what the bill does. We'll talk about what the likely impact of the bill will be, and then our principled reasons in favor of or opposing the legislation. So even if you don't entirely agree with our reasoning, you have a chance to see how we arrived at our conclusions, and can learn something from what we're writing. So, and like I said, it's all volunteer driven. It's member supported. There's no multi-million-dollar foundation that's funding us. It's $10 a year to become a member. Members, in addition to getting their reports, they get invitations to the annual banquet. We do not endorse candidates. We do not give money to candidates. We do very little lobbying. So it's mainly about education and evaluation. But we do give out awards to those that score highest in the previous year's report. And then at the annual members meeting, we'll usually have keynote speakers talking about important issues affecting state government. And the members also elect a board of directors, which this year is myself and the other members on the board that are tasked with assembling the content and approving the content of the next year's report. It's very easy to become involved. It's very grassroots driven. It's very simple to understand. And besides what's listed in our credo, we're known for opposing overburdening regulations that only get enforced through lawsuits. Minnesota likes to pass a lot of these. They do it a lot. We were the first state to ban the non-agricultural use of phosphorus. We were the first state to ban BPA plastic in sippy cups. We were the first state to ban most uses of a very common material, formaldehyde. This year, there's people trying to make us the first state to have 12 weeks of paid family leave. Okay, so some more to talk about for this year. We need to make inroads into opposing more of the omnibus bills and enforcing the state's constitutional protection for single subject bills. There's a fairly strong protection in our Constitution that says no bill shall embrace more than a single subject, the body of which is contained in its title. This has been routinely violated by the modern legislature and ignored by the courts. We need more libertarians and other principled activists to oppose this, because it makes it much harder to hold people accountable. We had, for example, last year we had the Omnibus E12 Education Policy and Finance Omnibus Bill. It contained 42% of the state's biennial budget in one bill. That much of the budget. It vastly increased the budget. Besides that, how much of the budget was contained in the bill, and it had new policy provisions as well. So we're opposing these types of things. We oppose pushing for laws that have no practical enforcement mechanism. Lots of feel-good legislation that we see passed. We also oppose unnecessary special sessions that concentrate power and accountability. And last year they called special session and they gave only 12 minutes, excuse me, not 12 minutes, 12 hours after the special session was called before it was convened. And there were legislators that weren't even in the state that couldn't even get back to perform their duties because of that abuse of power. So, okay, thank you. And other actions that are evading accountability are state employee contract negotiation and ratification process. It's very much rubber stamped outside of legislative session, usually ratified almost a year and a half after the contracts take effect. The labor management discussion becomes oftentimes one-sided. The constitutional amendment for party-affiliated compensation council, I wanted to bring this up because this goes way back to 2013, but it's going to be on the ballot this fall. There's going to be a constitutional amendment to have a party-affiliated, and not your party, by the way, compensation council, members of the two major parties, and that half appointed by the Supreme Court, half appointed by the governor to set the compensation of the legislators. Balance of power, separation of power. The legislature is supposed to have power of the purse. If some people think if you detach it from the legislature, then they won't be able to vote themselves more pay. Well, they haven't really been doing that anyway. But if you do detach it from the legislature, they're going to get well taken care of, because which branches of government are dependent on the legislature for their funds? The judiciary branch and the executive branch. And they're going to want to keep the legislature happy. It's going to be a really cozy relationship ratified by unelected representatives, and it's not going to serve the general public. So it's something to be watching for. It's a well-organized effort. We need more opposition to bad bills in committee. There's so many bills, if they think they're going to pass, you don't even hear opposition testimony in committee. Whenever you have a chance to vote against the state, to speak out against the status, go there and do so. And finally, there's other provisions we can do to make them a little less comfortable. We can try staggering the terms of the state senators, which are a number of neighboring states do. In other words, the length of terms is the same, but some of them get elected every 2 years. So that when this sailed through 4 years ago, it's so easy for people to forget about it. If they have to be on the ballot every other year, it holds them a little more accountable, at least some of them. And allow the legislature to call special sessions so the governor can't threaten to veto the entire budget without the legislature having any recourse. And finally, provisions that are talking about restoring nonpartisan legislature, which was what we had prior to mid-1970s, is something that you guys should find support for. Because if you're nonpartisan and you start talking about principles and you don't let them have the institutional advantages that come with party, then it gives alternative voices a much better say. And thank you so much for allowing me to address your group again. And I'll be back here till early this evening, and I hope that you guys will become members. And if you become a member today, I'll even give you one of these bumper stickers to help spread the word. Okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you.